And I'm so tickled that I get to be a part of this Ed Sessions 2.0. For those of you who are regulars, welcome back. And for those of you who this is your first time attending, welcome. Glad that you're going to be part of the discussion today. You are in for a very special time as we share lunch together and some great conversation. Now, folks are going to be trickling in. If you haven't gotten some food, please feel free to hop over to the line and grab a great lunch. And for those of you who have become Ed Sessions 2.0 regulars, you have already been exposed to nationally recognized speakers that are saying some really important things about education in America, thought-provoking things. But for those of you who are new, I just want to outline the goal of Ed Sessions. It's really a threefold goal: to elevate the conversation about what is possible in education in Idaho, to learn from national experts about what is working in education and what is not, and to help all of us as Idahoans understand the best way to make improvements to our schools. Ed Sessions 2.0 is, of course, brought to you by the J.A. and Catherine Albertson Foundation in partnership with KTVB, Idaho State Board of Education, Idaho Business for Education, Idaho School Boards Association, Idaho Technology Council, and the Idaho Association of School Administrators. They are our host partner this month, and the Executive Director of the Idaho Association of School Administrators is Rob Winslow, and Rob is right over here. If you just wave your hand, Rob, we want to thank you for being our host partner this month. Let me just briefly mention the vision of the IASA is to unify the voice of Idaho's education leaders, and they are committed to supporting those leaders, the leaders that will make all Idaho schools successful. So we appreciate their work and their making this possible today. And we have a nonprofit beneficiary this month that we want to introduce you to. Each month, Ed Sessions features a different education-related nonprofit that contributes to the Albertson Foundation vision of limitless learning for all Idahoans. And in honor of our topic this month, we are highlighting the Idaho Charter School Network. ICSN, is a membership organization that provides technical support, training, networking, and advocacy for not just charter schools, but their authorizers as well. So I want to introduce to you the Interim Executive Director of ICSN, Alan Miller. He's the principal at Forest Bird Charter School in Sandpoint, Idaho. He's going to provide a little bit more information about the Idaho Charter School Network and their important work for us. So Alan, come on up and give us a brief overview.
I want to thank you all for coming. It's a bit of a historic moment. At the moment, the Idaho legislature is considering the last step in our legislative advocacy process that began last December. It's also historic because it's the first time I've seen Don Keller in a tie. So, as you heard, we are a membership organization. We're also supported by foundation dollars, and we represent, at this point, 44 schools throughout the state of Idaho. And I'll just speak a little story. Last December, I was kind of on the phone with our foundation group, the Albertsons folks, and we got to talking about advocacy and what that means in Idaho. And so essentially, I would say my interim voyage as the executive director of the Idaho Charter School Network has been marked by our first step into the deep waters of political advocacy. And the reason I want to bring that story up is we hear a lot about dysfunctional government and how people can't get along and how sides are polarized and don't actually achieve anything. But at our level, at least here in Idaho, we started talking with the folks from the Idaho School Boards Association, the Idaho Administrators Association, the Idaho Public Charter School Network, the Idaho Public Charter School Commission, TAMRA. Who am I missing, Don? State Department of Ed. A bunch of us got together, and I have to be clear, we didn't speak at the start of these things. I think Don said something like, I'm never going to talk to that woman, referring to Jessica. But he did, and we came up over time with a compromise. A compromise is actually something that nobody really likes, but it actually moves the ball forward and goes and makes progress, okay? Because what I guess I want to say is that's what we did. And as someone who was new to the political advocacy business, I was really pleased to find that in the state of Idaho, you can actually make a difference. You can walk the halls and meet your senators, your legislators, and make your arguments, and they'll be heard if they're valuable and if they achieve the greater goal of making a higher quality education in Idaho. So as the executive director of the network, I represent, you know, we stand for high quality schools in Idaho. And one final story. I've been in a lot of hearing sessions with folks from all walks of life, and one of the things I've heard over and over in these education committee hearings is teachers somewhat in Idaho have stood up and said that they feel to some degree a sense of despair, that they feel the legislature doesn't listen to them. And I've heard the word despair used numerous times, and I'm just here to speak for what I know of the charter school network and the charter schools in Idaho. We do not despair. We struggle. It's a serious issue, some of the things that we worked on and some of the things that Don and I, you know, came together and tried to figure out how to make better. But we're not despairing. We're trying to make what we hope will be the next generation of replicable, innovative, and high-quality charter schools in Idaho. So thank you for your support.
Thank you, Alan. Well, this venue has been chosen for a very specific reason. The Linen Building and the bright green tablecloths, aren't those great? Welcome spring. All of this chosen very specifically because we wanted the kind of a venue that is small and friendly enough that you can interact, and not just with each other, but with the speakers as well. So we hope that you feel comfortable and that you will feel comfortable to interact. And so I'm going to get you started just with a little informal poll. How many of you have been to Ed Sessions 2.0 events before? Oh, good. A lot of you. And for those of you who have been here before, was there something that captured your attention that you want to help solve? If you could just raise your hand. How about this? Something that captured your attention that you just couldn't quit thinking about? Yeah. Thought-provoking. I think that's going to be the case today. Now, while dialogue in this space is critical, it's also important to have a method that will elevate this conversation statewide. So we video cast these presentations so folks can watch live or at their leisure. So we'd encourage you to let your educator friends know so that they can take part. People who are also interested in these topics should have that opportunity. And so if you are viewing via ktvb.com or the edsessions.org page, you can post questions on the Ed Sessions Facebook page at any time during the presentation. And if you tweet, the hashtag is EdSessions. So I want to welcome those of you who are watching via the webcast. It's great to have you along with us today. It's important that you've joined us, and we want you to feel a part of the conversation. Well, there's just no room in this room for or listening in that does not believe education reform is one of the hottest and most important topics of our time. Because there's a lot of passion that surrounds this topic, we certainly see that as news reporters, I can tell you. It is critical to have a neutral place to dialogue, and Ed Sessions 2.0 has been that place and continues to be that place. Now, many have been curious about how the speakers are chosen for these events every month. Well, here's the criteria. They have to be nationally recognized and known as national or international ed reformers. They also have to promote civil discourse about school improvement. As 21st century thought leaders, they need to be promoters of what can be. And while these speakers are nationally known and respected, you may or may not support their position on a specific topic, and that's absolutely okay. This environment is welcoming of that too. But everyone's thinking needs to be challenged, and I think we can all agree on that. So it's good for us and for Idaho students. And so whether you're here in the live audience or interacting on our Facebook site, we encourage you to use the kind of language that really draws people together and draws the fruit of this kind of engagement and ideas. They like to say here, and I love this, so I'm going to quote it, "We promise hot topics over a hot lunch, but no hot tempers, please." There we go. Now, before we introduce the speakers, I want you to grab that card on your table so that you can write down your questions, have it handy, so that you'll be able to think of the types of things that you want to ask. What we're going to do is we'll be picking up those cards as the speakers are concluding their prepared remarks. And when we do that, then I'll be able to have those here and we can get the speakers to address them. So I don't know if our speakers have had a chance to swallow a couple of bites or not, but I think we're going to get them started now. And I want to introduce, first of all, Kristoffer Haines. Kristoffer is the Vice President of National Development at Rocket Ship Education. He leads the organization's growth into new regions, and his past background, formerly the COO of KIPP Austin Public Schools, and he's worked with the KIPP Foundation during the early years of its national expansion. Kristoffer began his foray into education as a high school English teacher. That was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He holds degrees from Oregon State University and Emerson College and lives with his family in our neck of the woods, kind of, just in our neighbor state of Oregon. So let's make Kristoffer Haines feel very welcome. Kristoffer, come tell us more about Rocket Ship Education.
Well, thanks so much, first and foremost, for inviting Rick and I along. It's great to be here. And the first part of the day, just really understanding what's going on in Idaho, and the work that you are all are committed to, and having open dialogue about what Idaho 2.0 looks like for high-performing charters and choice for parents is encouraging and exciting. I'm excited to spend the next kind of 10 to 15 minutes talking about Rocket Ship Education, the work that we're doing in San Jose, our plans for expansion, and ultimately, how the Rocket Ship model, or a blended model that really advocates for phenomenal teachers, individualized, personalized learning for students, and parent advocacy, can work in Idaho, in Boise, and everywhere. Before I get started, I'll kind of do our "This is Rocket Ship" video. So if you guys can start there, we'll follow up afterwards.
I'm starting looking, and I'm starting, talking to people, going to schools, and finding out, all the troubles they have, and how their academic level is so low. Oh, and because you live in the area, this is the school that your kid belongs to.
When we started high school, our freshman class had about 800 students. And 4 years later, 450 of us graduated. And nobody ever talked about what happened to those 350 students. Where did those 350 students go? I'll
just keep on looking, even if I have to use somebody else's address.
The assumption is if I take my kid to school every day and they do their homework, it should all work out. And the reality is that's not the case.
Rocket Ship has excellent teachers and school leaders that are creating transformational schools.
If you are a teacher who is committed to not only providing an excellent education to all students, but a teacher who wants to be really, really good at it, who is not going to accept being good enough, this is the place to come.
It is the difference between a decent school, a good school, and a really great school is that you have teachers who are invested in the work that they're doing, and they understand what they're doing and how to do it best. And so it takes coaches to make that happen.
Center of the conversation is how it's going to help the kids, but then it's also how we decide to come up with something new.
I feel like a professional at Rocket Ship. We're constantly striving to push students to that next level, and along with that, we're constantly striving to push teachers to that next level.
Between looking at how we can improve and then looking at what other people are doing so frequently, I think that it just creates this demand for innovation.
At Rocket Ship, we believe that every child has a unique set of needs. Every single need of every single child is really met in a personalized fashion.
I see students who are growing at such an incredible rate, from students who are so far behind and are now at grade level or above grade level, because how Rocket Ship educates the individual. And we're not educating just a room full of children, we're educating every single individual in that room.
When we sit down with our data, we don't just make one kind of standard plan that we're using for the next 8 weeks. We make multiple different pieces of a plan that we're going to use for our kids so that they're all getting what they need.
When I started here at Rocket Ship, I was in the second or first grade level, and now that our teachers helped us, I think I'm already in a fourth or fifth grade.
And the student knows that because of my hard work, the students' hard work, they were able to learn and they were able to change themselves and better themselves.
Rocketship believes that engaged parents are essential, absolutely essential, in eliminating the achievement gap.
It makes me feel really happy at the end of the day knowing that he is developing all this sense of responsibility and values.
O sea, Rocketship ha sido una especie como de unión entre maestros, director, hijos, papás, y esto ha hecho que los niños suban, y esto ha formado una especie de unidad entre todos.
I am not going to have anywhere near as much of an impact to really change things in this community as much as the parent that has lived here for years and whose family is growing up here. If we are really going to succeed in this mission of eliminating the achievement gap, and we do not recognize parents as the leaders in making this happen, it's not going to happen.
To eliminate the achievement gap, I think it's much more than Rocketship and just our instruction. It is creating a movement in a community where a community says, we're not going to tolerate this anymore.
These are not children of privilege, but these are children of America, and they deserve the same education that every single child in America does. And I believe that what Rocketship is doing is Rocketship is leveling the playing field and is giving these children the quality education that children that have that level of privilege. And I think that's incredibly special about Rocketship.
I am a Rocketship Rocketeer. 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 I am Andrew and I'm a Rocketeer.
Great, thank you. So sometimes I just stop there because that usually works. But I'll keep going to share a little more about Rocketship. I'm excited to share a little more about the model and the work that we're doing. So I want to start first, though, with a story and ultimately, why we think it's necessary to rethink elementary school. What does that mean? What's wrong with the current model of 25 students and a teacher in a room? And why are we rethinking this, and what does that mean? And so I want to start with a story of two students. Maya and Santiago are in the same class at a school in San Jose, California. And they both exemplify a diverse set of needs, not just in San Jose or California, but across the country. Maya is a phenomenally high performer. She's above grade level. For the most part, in her traditional school where she was very successful, she was bored. She was above grade level in reading and math, and was really unable to access the full capacity of what a school, in our opinion, should be able to provide her. Santiago, on the other hand, came from a home in which it was just he and his mother. His father had passed away a couple of years before. He had social, emotional issues that his local school district said he couldn't handle an entire day. They cut him down to a third of a day, and when he was there, he was not a part of the traditional classroom. He came to Rocketship, and we realized what some of his needs were, which to individualize and personalize the curriculum for him. The Learning Lab was able to do this. Maya now is at a high-performing school, Downtown College Prep in San Jose. Santiago, over the 4 years that he was able to not get back up to par, but beyond, is at the local KIPP school. He and his mother have rekindled their relationship. He talks about wanting to go to Harvard, and they have open dialogue around what it means for him to go to college one day. These two students are not unique, not just to Rocketship or San Jose, but I think parents and families everywhere, and they exemplify the three core pillars of Rocketship, which are individualizing what it means for a student, getting them to and beyond grade level, ensuring that parents are there to support and the needs of their child, and that teachers are committed. And without those three components, not only would Maya and Santiago be able to excel and go further above and beyond where they were, but no student would. And the results aren't just for these 2 students, but all of our students in San Jose. We are currently 7 K-5 elementary schools in San Jose. We'll add 2 more next year, and our first school outside of California in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and the following year in Nashville will continue to grow pretty significantly, which I'll show you in a moment. Our results to date have been impressive, and we're proud of them. There's still a lot of work to do. We're the highest performing network of elementary schools in the state of California, not just compared to low income and ELL students, but the state as in entirety. When you compare our math scores to the top 10% highest income districts in the state of California, our students are 82% proficient and advanced on the California state test. Those in the most affluent areas in the state are 87% proficient and advanced. And for us, our mission is to eliminate the achievement gap, and this is proof that we are nearly there, 5 percentage points away from the most affluent districts in the state, which we're incredibly proud of. So real quickly, at a glance, we are K-5 elementary school, free, public, open enrollment, not-for-profit organization, roughly 600 students per school. In San Jose, 90% free and reduced lunch, 75% English language learners. You can see a little bit about who we are right now, and we have approval to open in Wisconsin, Indiana, Louisiana. We have 25 additional charters in the state of California, in the Bay Area, that we will continue to use and open as well. And we're recently approved a couple weeks ago in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. And so we're excited about our expansion plans and where we're headed. We've grown kind of 10x since our inception, and continue to do so at a rate of about 50 to 60% each year. Our 5-year plan and goal is to reach 25,000 students by 2017. And this is not growth for growth's sake, but in the stark reality is, with 14 million students and 13,000 failing schools, I personally believe, and Rocket Ship feels the same way. We're doing this work because we're not going to take 130 years to eliminate the achievement gap, and it's just we are in a crisis, not just nationally but locally. And if we don't find a way to scale, if we don't find a way to create high performing seats and choice for all of our families and our communities, this is not going to get better anytime soon. And so when we think back about what it means to rethink elementary school or education, I think if you think about what a traditional classroom looks like today, it's not so different from the Norman Rockwell pictures of 150 years ago, a teacher in a classroom with rows of desks. And the traditional one-size-fits-all was great for efficiency's sake, for the putting things on a line and making sure they got from point A to point B. But we no longer live in a world in which that is the most effective and efficient way for advancement or for innovation. And today's reality is personalization is key, and with the right framework and the right system and structure, we can personalize and make this unique. I think the iPhone is the most exemplifies this more than anything else, particularly for our young people. And so in order to eliminate the achievement gap in our lifetimes, there's kind of 3 pillars that we believe are key to doing this, and the video shared this. But first and foremost, we need excellent teachers and leaders to create transformational schools. This is a limited resource in our country. There are not enough transformational teachers, and if we don't find a way to both find a way to create more leaders, but also not have such a reliance on the number, it's going to be very difficult for us to overcome our challenges. Secondly, every student has a unique set of needs. It's the idea of differentiating for 25 to 30 students in a classroom is difficult at best, and personalizing and individualizing what it means to be a student is key to us being able to reach every single student, create an individualized learning plan, and make that successful. And then finally, without parents advocating on behalf of their communities, their schools, this work is not going to get where it needs to be. So what does this mean at Rocket Ship? So for us, it's important that we have phenomenal master teachers who have support and resources underneath them that can help personalize and individualize what happens in the classroom. And so we've got a teacher who is in control of his or her classroom. There are tutors, there's technology that supports it. In our case, we have a rotational model in which direct instruction happens in the classroom. Students spend about a quarter of their day in the learning lab, where online adaptive curricula, small group tutoring, small group reading, independent work is really driven by data, assessment, and what's possible for the individual student. And so if you're a first grader at Rocketship and you go into the learning lab, you're going to sit down at your station, and one of three things is going to happen. You're going to pick up where you left off from yesterday for your online learning session, or it's going to say you need to go do small group reading with Mr. Haines, or it's going to say go get a book from your DRA leveled binder and start to read. And the beauty of being able to do this is every single day at every moment the child is learning what he or she needs at the moment they need it, not when the teacher has time to get to them. And so what we found is, this really allows us to tier our structure for teaching and be, phenomenally supportive of our teachers at the highest level. You can kind of see, our mantra is the right lesson, the right student at the right time. There's no reason that Maya should have to wait for the teacher to come around and push her. Nor should Santiago have to wait until somebody has time after school for a couple hours to tutor him to find the right way. That needs to be incorporated within the school day in order for all students to excel. And so personalizing for us means a combination of technology, tutors, independent reading, and enrichment, as well as traditional classroom instruction. And then finally, deep parent engagement. So what's happening outside of the day, what's happening in the classroom. Our parents volunteer 30 hours a year in support of their classroom and their school. We have monthly community meetings that average 75% attendance, and really finding a way to engage parents, have them volunteer, and impact the community is ultimately what we believe is going to change that work that we do. We continue to innovate our model. I don't think that what we're doing is phenomenally crazy or outside of the box, unless it's related to the existing model. Certainly all of this is possible, doable. It's better for the student. It's better for our teachers, and it's something that I think our parents crave and want. And we believe it's certainly what we think is the most important. As a K-5, certainly, a lot of times we get the question, what happens for 6, 12, and beyond? And for us, this is where our parents really come in. And one story I'd like to share is after our students, our first cohort, left in the 5th grade and they went to the 6th grade to the local middle school, the teacher didn't have homework, and the students came home saying they weren't engaged, and the parents went to that teacher and they said, we'd like to work with you, we'd like to find a better way, our students aren't happy, and the teacher blew them off. They went to the principal, and the principal blew them off. They went to the superintendent, and the superintendent blew them off. And they came back to us and they said, you told us to advocate, you told us to keep fighting, we're not getting a response, what do we do? And so we worked with these parents, we worked with the political action group, and we said, look, that superintendent is appointed by an elected school board. You have the right to go out and do this work. And so we had a group of parents form a political action committee. They ran a slate of 4 board members, got 3 of them elected, and a year later, not only had that middle school had a new principal, but they'd recruited 2 other high-performing 6 through 12 charter operators into the neighborhood. And at the end of the day, we really believe that's the thing that's going to tip the scales. When the parents get involved and they understand what it means to personalize education and make it personal, real change is going to happen. And so why rethink elementary school? Because Maya and Santiago and every other child deserves it. Certainly in Boise and the entire state of Idaho, the rethinking part is done, in my opinion. Now it's just a matter of how do we implement, how do we become our own force of nature to make sure that this can happen. So I'm excited for Rick to share a little more about Carpe Diem as a SIC-12 model. We are compatriots in spirit and profession. I'll look forward to having him share a little more with you, and then certainly look forward to just answering any questions, any and all questions that you all might have. So, Dee, if you'd like to come do the intro. Thanks for this part, and look forward to sharing more. Thank you. Yeah.
Exciting. All right, well, now we get to hear from Rick Ogston, and he's the Executive Director of Carpe Diem. And Carpe Diem is a K-12 system of schools serving students throughout Arizona and expanding to Ohio. And those I states, we get them all mixed up. Is it Illinois? Is that Indiana. See, it's a problem. Anyway, they're expanding. That's the bottom line. He served as president of the Arizona Charter School Association, adjunct professor of philosophy at Arizona Western College, and school improvement coach for the Arizona Department of Education. And prior to his work in education, Rick was director and therapist of a marriage and family counseling center, a U.S. Marine Corps communications officer, and U.S. Navy Marine chaplain. Rick has an undergraduate degree in political science and 2 master's degrees, one in theology and the other in education. And as I ask Rick to come up, I just want to point out something I think is very important for Ed Sessions 2.0, and in particular for your participation in today's event. We have a couple of practitioners here, a couple of folks who are in the trenches, dealing with the realities day in and day out, and having served as educators. I think that's very important to all of us. We appreciate the perspective that you bring. So let me welcome Rick Ogston now to the stage.
It is a pleasure to be here. I have spent the last 8 years of the 10 years of educational involvement that I've had trying to be anonymous. I didn't start in this to try to change education or to be involved in education. Rather, I just was doing my merry little thing in marriage and family therapy and whatever, and my wife, who's a professional educator, she thought that, that I ought to get a master's degree in education because she thought I could make a difference. And I thought, no, because it's kind of like this in a lot of ways, and I'm kind of really outside of that. And but after a lot of thought and prayer and things like that, I really felt compelled to get into it and see what we could do. Well, it became kind of challenging for me because I ended up having a K-12 system of charter schools in Yuma, Arizona. Now, they were great schools. They were performing at or above, mostly above the traditional school models, but I wasn't really satisfied with what the kind of output and the kind of inputs that we were given. I was actually walking around my school, my Carpe Diem school at that time of the middle and high school, and they had 300 students there, and they're all in individual classrooms. And you know what happens in school? The kids go into the classroom, shut the door, and you can't see in, can't see out, and whatever happens, happens. And but I began walking around that school, and I was going over there, and I peeked in classrooms. I walked in the classrooms, and I started noticing the various levels of disengagement, and that was on the part of the teachers. Then I began looking at the the students, and began looking at the disengagement there. And I noticed that something's wrong with this picture. Now, you see what I call an Ichabod Crane moment. I literally went back to my office, banged my head on the desk, literally, which is my habit of this oak desk, and I bang my head on it and go, God, there's got to be a better way. And kind of immediately, my eyes were drawn to the cell phone on my hip, which was much larger at that time than the one I have now, and the technology in my office, and I began thinking, oh my goodness, we could leverage technology and begin to individualize instruction and potentially re-engage students at their ability levels rather than the ability level of the class. Now, I call it the Ichabod Crane moment because Ichabod Crane, the parody of bad teaching in the Legend of Sleepy Hollows in the 1800s, I realized at that moment that he would have been just as comfortable in any one of my classrooms as he was in his own in those days. Something's wrong with that picture. Now, some of you may really prefer this picture of Ichabod Crane, the Johnny Depp version. But nonetheless, it was that moment that was really an epiphany for me. And I began to try to figure out, okay, what can we do to change education? And this question began to just circle around in my mind. Does our pedagogy match our learner and our times? Well, think about the students that we're educating today. What are they like? They're called the iGen, and there's all kinds of names for them. But no matter what it is, they look like this. They're little kids with iPods and iPhones and things. And I love going in restaurants, and I see these little kids out there. They're operating their parents' technology. And we have kindergartners in our system that know more about how to operate the technology in the classroom than our teachers do at times, than substitute teachers for sure. But they look like this, and that's what they look like in some schools as well, because they're not without technology. I mean, when they're outside of the school realm, what are they doing? They're powered up. They're involved. They're connected. When they go to school, they're You can't use your cell phone, turn it off, power it down, you can't do this, you can't do that, and you've got to listen and you've got to sit still while we instill. Well, I figured that that really wasn't the kind of message that we needed to be sending to kids, nor the kind of educational style that was best for the kids of today. So I began to think about, what does this student of today really look like? Well, when you mention the word, or you should say the word apple to students today, is that what they think of? No, but that may be what you and I have thought of in our generation, right? No, they're thinking about this. So apple truly is in the eye of the beholder. We have that. They are a connected generation all over the place, except when they go to school. And so we begin thinking about, how do they actually learn? What is the neuroscience behind it? And when we begin looking at some of the research behind how do people learn, how does those mechanisms within the mind actually result in learning and information analysis and critical thinking skills, we turn to the cognitive science, and we can see that after literally wiring people up and trying to examine the mind, it came up with a really simple solution, one that schools have been trying to do for a long time. That is really not so focused on whether, well, this student needs a visual presentation, this student needs a kinesthetic presentation, and I know the Howard Gardner and all the themes, the theories behind all of that. But neuroscience really talks about differentiation by content and not really by student when it comes to the origin of the content. For instance, when you're talking about learning about the Star-Spangled Banner and national anthems and things like that, is it really more effective to just read the lyrics to any national anthem of any country and just begin to study it that way? Or would a great introduction be to go ahead and just hear the national anthem played at the Super Bowl? And as the planes are going over and the crowd is raising up and singing the song, and you see all of the excitement of that, and you hear the national anthem being sung by the military choirs, how exciting is that? Well, to me, that's really awesome, but that's kind of hard to bring into the classroom, to all those choirs and all those people and all those airplanes going over it. Now, but if you could use technology, you could bring those experiences into the classroom when the content dictated that it's needed. And so we begin to look at, okay, what kind of resources can we have to be able to do that? Well, we figured that if we could begin to differentiate the content by looking and see what does the content really need to be able to come alive to students and to be engaging, and then look at the student and find exactly where are they in the learning continuum. What does a sixth grader mean to you? When you say, oh, he's a sixth grader, what does that connote in your mind? Or a seventh grader or an eighth grader? Well, what we learned is it really doesn't mean a lot, because we have students that come to our schools that are in, quote, sixth grade, but that are very capable of doing 10th and 11th grade work. And we have 10th graders and 11th graders in our school that we just opened in Indianapolis that reported pre-K literacy skills. Pre-K. That's shocking to me, if not criminal. And so if we were to try to approach those 9th and 10th graders at a 10th grade level of curriculum, what's going to happen? Or even 9th grade and 8th grade. So we were able to actually look at that student, not the transcript, not the grade level, and say, well, how about if we take them back and start building those literacy skills now, and try to bring them up to speed, if you would, to their and to their peers. Well, in doing that, in approaching kids at their instructional level versus their grade level, some people call it the ability level, but looking at that and then providing the appropriate curriculum, we were able to bring some of these students up from kindergarten literacy to sixth grade in 5 months. Now that is phenomenal. And that is not just the exception, but it's what happens when you begin to approach the kids where they are instead of where the system says they should be. Now, how do you do that best is by doing this. You combine your pedagogy, your understanding of how kids learn, with what we call a digigogy. And pedagogy is about methods to instruct. Digigogy is about the methods with a technology framework. I prefer not to call us a blended learning and technology-dependent school, but because technology isn't what it's all about. It's a tool to really customize and personalize education for kids. That's really what it is. So if you were really to combine the digigogy and a pedagogy together, you have a paradigm shift. And then I believe you can better reach the 21st century student. Remember Bloom's taxonomy? Whenever I go to speak, we talk about what are the 21st century skills? Every business, everybody wants 21st century skills. What are those? And if we were to kind of ask the audience here today, what are the, usually you come up with the 4 C's. You come up with the communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. Okay, which one of those was not necessary in the 20th century? How about the 19th century or 18th century? Well, all of them have been necessary. And Bloom's in 1956 and 57, he's been doing that all along, trying to get people to the higher levels of thinking. And what we became very cognizant of is that it really wasn't about the verbs of learning that we needed to be focused on. We needed to be focused on how we apply the verbs in a relevant way to the current generation. So the verbs of learning can transcend generations, I think, because everybody needs communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity. But what we've got to do is change how we apply it and use it within the classroom. And so you bring in, for now, you bring in all kinds of digigogy, if you would, and you can do all the levels of Bloom's taxonomy using digigogy. You can apply it using these famous icons to include social networking sites, and you can use Wikipedias and things like that, and bring groups together in schools, not only in our schools but in other schools, so kids are learning from each other. You begin to leverage the technology plus the traditional pedagogy and verbs to create a learning environment that is so personalized and then extremely engaging for kids. Now, essentially what we did in applying that, and we're not saying that this is the only way to do it, but what we did is we decided we would flip the school. You've heard of the flipped classroom, when the kids actually go out and they listen to video lectures and instruction at nighttime, then they come to school and do practical work. Well, I decided that that framework doesn't work best for a lot of kids in poverty situations because they don't have the bandwidth of the computer or technology at home. So if we flip the school to where we allowed the kids to get video instruction chunked and they get digital, if you would, opportunities to learn at their pace and their level and to really be able to grow at their pace, then we blend that in with face-to-face instruction where they meet regularly with teachers at their instructional level, that you've got the best of both worlds. Here's what it looks like at Carpe Diem. Maybe not. Do you have the video? It's embedded in the link. Well, that's exciting. That's not it. Okay, that's not it either. Well, let me describe it and see if they can bring it up. But when the students walk into our school, they walk into something that looks like a learning lab or a learning center, and they all have cubicles. Now, a lot of people think, oh, that's so impersonal. Well, what is so personal about kids filing into a classroom with 35, 40 other kids and with one teacher standing up there and lecturing? But what we have found is that you invite them into the learning center, and they have their own office, and they get to stay there all day long. Not in the seat all day long, but that's their space for all year long, if you would. And they get to decorate it. On holidays, they bring Christmas lights and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of fun to see how they decorate their office. But one of the key components is they have to create a name tag for themselves. And the name tag has, what do you want to be called? And then they have to affix to that name tag a symbol of their future. Because you see, it's not really about graduation or diplomas. That's not what we're interested in. We're interested in them thinking and transcending the high school experience to equipping them for life. Our mission is to really educate the kids with knowledge, empower them, and to equip them for life. And as we do that, we begin trying to connect the data, the learning, to what their goals are. Now, admittedly, a 6th grader may come in and say, you know what, I want to be a dancer, you know, and, or they want to be a physicist. And by the time they get to 12th grade, it's changed 50 times. That's okay. And I say dancer because when I was young, anybody in here old enough to, yeah, you are, some of you are, I won't admit who, but Red Skelton show, you know, I wanted to be a dancer on the Red Skelton show. Yeah? I really did. And then I wanted to be an attorney. That's close connection right there, you know. And now here I am. You know, what am I doing here? I can't dance, you know, and I certainly couldn't go into a court of law. But, you know, it changed a lot. Well, the kids are dynamic and changing a lot. But if we can begin to approach them where they are and where their interests are and begin to connect with them, then I think we can personalize it to a degree that can't be done in just a traditional school with a bunch of kids going through classrooms. We have, so the kids, they log into their curriculum, they begin their education digitally at their pace, and I say that cautiously because if you really let some kids go at their pace, they will never graduate. So there's got to be a minimum pace. So we have a minimum pace for them, and they can auto-progress unless and until they drop below the threshold when it comes to some quizzes and tests and everything. When it comes to those quizzes and tests, if they fail them or get too low of a grade, then it automatically stops them, and there's some coaches, some parapros, assistant teachers that are walking around ready to assist them. And their job is to do a triage. Their job is to find out, did the student invest what they need to really learn the material? Part of the Carpe Diem mission is to transfer the responsibility of learning from the system to the student, to empower them for life, to make good choices. And if they made a bad choice, they didn't really go through the system, they didn't really take good notes, then the teacher redirects them or the coach redirects them. But if it's because they really didn't get the concept, then they are redirected to either a virtual teacher live that can help them, or they can talk with the coach right there, or they can go downstairs and talk with one of our live teachers if they're not already going to be working with them that day. And they have to make appointments for that. They're learning appointment skills, time management skills. They're learning to look at their own data. There's instant feedback across the screen at all times. The students know where they are, the qualitative and the quantitative amount of their work. And then, you know, that's the individualized learning upstairs to where they're empowered to make a difference in their own life. And then they go downstairs throughout the day. It's a rotational model. And they go downstairs to the collaborative area, to where they have social collaborative experiences with communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity. They get to do projects. They get to have discussion groups and debates and all kinds of things like that. That takes what they've learned upstairs and makes it real and relevant downstairs. Essentially, that's, I think my time is up, right? I'm getting close. I got 3 minutes. Essentially, that's the Carpe Diem model. I'm sorry you couldn't get the video in there. It's really kind of exciting because you can get to see the kids and get to see how excited they are and how empowered they are and how, in spite of the use of technology, when people say it's impersonal or whatever, it really isn't. Our kids say they get more one-on-one time with adult instructors in our model than they have in a traditional setting. And they get immediate feedback. And they get connected with their future and their goals. And we know their parents, and they know us. And so there's a lot of interactivity. And it's all because we have data that the teachers can respond to, that the students also respond to, and the parents become aware of. Now, we're not just about the academics. We have a picture here, and I threw this in there because some people say, oh, it's an online school. Well, we make use of some online curriculum. And one newspaper wrote about us. It's an online school, and they even do PE online. So I brought this slide to tell you, that's our online PE right there. We have a fitness center. And in fact, when we move into an area and we establish our fitness center, the people who are part of our team that have membership in clubs stop their clubs and come to our fitness center because they really enjoy that. We have a certified personal trainer. We're teaching them about health and nutrition. So we're trying to educate them that way as well. And so they make use of the equipment. They've got instructors in Indianapolis. That's our newest school, Indianapolis. That's kind of like our 2.0 version here. And the guy in the red shirt in the middle slide at the top, he's the former Mr. Indiana. So whenever we have a security situation, Cliff, go take care of this situation anyway. But that's kind of a synopsis of Carpe Diem. And again, it's not the solution or the way to do it. But I think if you're going to really talk about how do we reach kids today, we're going to have to approach them where they are with the tools that they already know how to use. Not just because it engages them, but because it personalizes it. Blended learning, they call it, digital learning. I prefer to say personal learning. And whatever it takes to help kids learn, whatever it takes to personalize it and approach them at their level is what we as professional educators, businessmen, and community ought to be willing to do, no matter the cost. Thank you, and that'll be it.
Well, we're going to take a few minutes now so that you can get your burning questions written down on paper. Maybe talk as a table. Very quickly talk together, come up with at least one question per table that you would like to have addressed by our guest today. And perhaps if we can get that video. Is it ready? Okay, let's take a minute then. Maybe you can start thinking about your questions, but let's watch the video about Carpe Diem. I know we all want to see that.
The bureaucracy. Students all across the country have been losing motivation to learn. What we became frustrated with is that the system of education that we had really was more system-centric than it was student-centric. Our students need a new approach to education. Carpe Diem has that new approach. As you enter Carpe Diem, one of the first things you'll notice is that it doesn't look like other schools.
It's completely different than a normal school. I would have to say it's very advanced.
Carpe Diem was very different, but in a good way.
Carpe Diem Collegiate High School is a learning school that blends the best of face-to-face instruction, technology, and extended learning opportunities in order to boost student achievement. Kids today are wired in every way.
That's okay. We're flexible. And get your questions, and we'll give you about 4 or 5 minutes to do the Q&A as soon as you have those available to the folks that are going to come around and pick them up. Okay, so I've got a lot of questions here and not a lot of time. What we're going to do questions up until 1 o'clock, and then we'll let you go if you need to go. We'll continue, though, the videotape so that you'll be able to see if we can get through a few more of the questions, because there's a lot here. I want to let you know, good news, there's still more food. So if you'd like seconds, you're welcome to that. Just feel free. This is all family here. And we're going to get started on these, and I'm just going to try to do these rapid fire, and maybe if, gentlemen, if you can just answer so we can get through as many as possible, just, cut to the chase. How does that sound? Let's talk about rocket ship first. Here's a question. Why is the rocket ship approach only occurring in a charter school context? Can it also occur in the public school setting? What can you tell us about that?
Absolutely.
Chris?
I mean, I think with both rocket ship and Carpe Diem, there's nothing here that can't be done in the traditional school model if willing. I think for both of our models, it means an investment in training for the learning lab, for individualization, for professional development. It means less teachers. Less teachers is not something that goes over well with the traditional school model very often. But in our opinion, certainly the ability to do this is not complicated. Nothing is in-house. Everything is external. Everything lives on the cloud. Anybody in this room could just as easily access the online learning programs and have access to the data that our teachers have on a day-to-day basis.
I might add to that though the models themselves will lend itself to having a reduced teacher population, if you've got the money, and money is no object, then it doesn't need to have a reduced teacher population. You can, in both models, you've got to repurpose teachers, and that's really the key. And so there have been questions that have been levied against us. Well, if we start using technology, are we going to replace teachers? And I flippantly respond, very compassionately, of course, if you think you can be replaced by a computer, then you probably should be. True. A real, purposeful, strategic, and professional teacher can never be replaced by a computer. Never. And as I love what your council has come up with, the blame isn't with the teachers and the administrators, it's a system. And so to really implement our models, it can be done, but you've got to redesign the system so that it can support it and sustain it and get the same kind of results.
How about both of the schools here? This is asked of rocket ship, but I'm curious on both sides. Are your schools spending more or less per student than the traditional public schools in your area?
We're spending the same. I mean, our goal is the schools themselves are self-sustaining on per pupil funds. In order to scale, in order to be successful, God bless all the great philanthropists in the world, but 14 million students is that is an untenable number at needing $500 or $1,000 per child per year. And so for us, the true way to have an impact and to be scalable is to do it on state and federal funds as they come.
The core models, I think, for both of us can actually, there's an argument to be made, we can do it for less, but what we choose to do is to reinvest the money in paying our teachers more and paying, giving more resources and things like that. So if you were just to do the core instruction per pupil, it could be less, but why make it less just because you can? Why not pay the teachers more, give them better benefits, and create more valuable resources for kids?
Kristoffer, you talked a lot about motivating parents and how crucial that is. How do you get those parents to that level of engagement?
So we get this question all the time, and I wish it were more complicated than saying it's just about relationships. And it's about trust with the families. And, our parents, this is no different than KIPP or other high-performing charters across the country. We do home visits. We do home visits before the school year starts. We do home visits when it's required. And nothing is more powerful or impactful to a parent when the principal is sitting in their living room on the couch. And their willingness and ability and desire to be a participant in the school, either through volunteering or to pick up the phone when the principal calls because the child is struggling. That trust and that kind of personalization is huge. And you need to create value for the parents in the school in a way that doesn't have you just come 3 times a year to hear what the grades are and why they are that way. So there's definitely work behind it, but first and foremost, it's about relationships, and it's about being intentional for those parents.
You mentioned that whole idea of community change too, and is there a very strategic approach to that? How do you?
I mean, there is, but it's unique by community. What the community of San Jose needs is much different than the community of Boise or McCall or Chicago, certainly. And so for us, as we go into each community, before we open a school, we have four employees on the ground 18 months before the first school opens, and their job is really to establish that school, engage the community, do the work on the ground, really figure out what the parent engagement strategy needs to be, and how we're going to be successful. You can't just put a school up and expect it to be great. It's a lot of work, and the only way you'll be successful is engaging the community and ensuring that you're meeting their needs.
Rick, we'll start with you on this question. What makes your school no excuses?
We've had a motto at our school: no blame, no shame, no excuses. We've had it for years. No blame, because it really doesn't really benefit anybody to start blaming, well, it's your fault, your fault. No shame, because we've, as educators, and all of us, I think we've tried really hard for years to try to have a better effect and a greater effect on student achievement. And then many times, we've failed, but we've also had some successes. But there is no excuse for having a 10th grader come and report with pre-K literacy. There is no excuse for having 6th graders stuck in 6th grade when they can do 10th and 11th grade work. So for us, it's about, okay, let's not worry about the good feel that we have because we've tried hard. Let's look at the data, and let's do some constructive things to be able to change the trajectory of the students learning who are failing at that point. And so there's no excuse for not using the data and changing and let it inform your instruction to help the student where they are.
Kristoffer, how do you recruit, and how much do you pay your teachers?
So the recruiting is in San Jose now. It's mostly word of mouth. We have a pretty significant wait list for our schools and our new schools as they grow. Our first school in Milwaukee, which will open this fall, it's relationships. We're going door to door. We're holding community meetings. We're meeting with community-based organizations. We're reaching out to Head Starts and pre-K programs. Engaging parents and literally sharing what our model has to offer, where the neighborhood school is academically, and what it means to really engage in the next 13 years of your child's life and find a meaningful path for them to get to and through college. And that's what happens those 18 months before the first school opens, is on the ground, kind of door to door recruiting. And no different than other high performers. Once established, the proof is in the pudding, and the high performing schools are you get to a point where they are sought out. Our teachers are paid well, and we use the savings from having fewer certified teachers in the school, and we reinvest. We have a handful of teachers that make 6 figures in California. Our master teachers, and it's our goal in the next couple of years to double teacher salaries. We really want to professionalize what it means to be a teacher, what it means to want to be an assistant principal and a principal, and set somebody on the path to doing so. Money is not a reason that a lot of people leave a job, but it is a reason why people decide to stay and continue to pursue greater opportunities, and something we're phenomenally committed to.
So what is the ratio of instructional staff to children?
So it's actually pretty low. So adult to child is about 25 to 1. For the entire school. Certified teachers, it's more like 35 to 40. And so the traditional group of 100 students in a grade for us is 3 teachers and then 5 staff in the learning lab. Those 5 staff in the learning lab can serve all 600 students. And so what we're finding is tiering the level and the expertise through which teachers can individualize and serve students. Our certified teachers are doing the higher order thinking, the critical thinking, and the direct instruction. When students are in the learning lab doing scripted curriculum and curricula and online adaptive learning, you don't need certified teachers to do that work. It's equally as important, but you don't have to have a master's of education and 15 years experience in order to be effective.
Rick, for you and Carpe Diem, how do you deal with students who don't have the personal motivation to meet the minimum progress?
Oh, that's never a problem at Carpe Diem. Surely not in your schools either. One of the challenges that we have is because we try to transfer the responsibility of learning to the student when they come to our schools, they don't really come ready to do that. Cohort, education and matriculation and being able to just do seat time and check out is really pretty cool for a lot of kids. They can just kind of slide on through. But here, they can't really do that. And so when they have to carry the weight, in other words, they have to engage the curriculum, they have to engage the instruction, a lot of them aren't ready to do that. Hence, go back to the very simple stuff. It's not secret sauce. Start with relationships. Kids who don't have any internal motivation oftentimes can be swayed by external motivation through relationships. Also through getting them a vision for why they're there. I remember a conversation just a little over a month ago with one of the students whose performance was waning at that point externally, and she wanted to be a cosmetologist. And so she's saying, Mr. Ogston, I don't need to know these quadratic equations. And my answer to her was, you're right. I mean, you're never going to use those things. And so she had no motivation to learn it at that point. But then I began to talk about how quadratics are used with convex mirrors. And the mirrors that she's going to be looking into and during makeup and all that. And I gave her a broader understanding and actually help her and go, okay, I still don't like it, but I'll do it. Now, you have extreme cases, and a lot of the external motivation is lost because the kids are over their instructional level. But when you begin, again, approaching them at their instructional level to where they're not at the frustration point, to where they can actually have success, and you begin to leverage success, it helps to motivate them. So the first thing that we've got to do when we have a demotivated student is find out what's going on. Establish the relationships, look at the context, but we also have kids that we have things, a system of logical consequences, because we're trying to teach them time management. Hey, you will walk into our school, and from time to time, you will see some kids that are just sitting back, in their office space, just kind of staring at the screen. And you'll find some with their head down. And there's this myth in current education that's 100% engagement 100% of the time. Which one of you do that in your job? No. But sometimes they're taking an eye break, they're taking a little rest, whatever like that. Well, if they don't start snoring, that's okay. But we're looking at data because every day they have data and that they're required to produce. They've got a production level, like a sales team. They have to produce so much. And if it's not, it's flagged, and then we have the conversations. If they don't use their time well, then they get to, just like I do, I have to stay after work. They have to stay after school. They have to go to Saturday schools, things like that. Logical consequences, not a punishment, but it's based upon their decisions. How did you do this? Because it's not a matter of can they a lot of times, it's a matter of they don't want to. So re-engage through relationships, connect with vocations, with purpose, with vision, and begin to inspire them. Be able to check their frustration level, make sure they're on the right instructional level. It's a complex question because there's a lot of reasons for disengagement or low motivation.
And this is a complicated question, too, but I'm going to ask you each to tackle it in about 30 seconds, all right?
Less than what I just did.
Yeah, well, no, that was great, though. Let's start with you, Kristoffer. What are the mindsets you believe teachers and leaders must have to execute your school model?
I mean, you just have to believe that children can learn and that anybody, regardless of background, where they're coming from, has the potential to get to and through college. And for us currently in San Jose, 90% free and reduced lunch, 75% English language learners, a majority of students who, are first generation, citizens, really just engaging, you walk into our school, you're going to see college banners everywhere. Homerooms are known by, the college in which the homeroom teacher graduated from. There's a larger end goal in sight for us. And, I think at the end of the day that, you stay focused on the North Star and you'll make it.
So you set the expectation high no matter what they go home to at night.
Right, and then you continue to reinforce that in the day, and you have those conversations with parents. For us, we have 6 years to continue to have those conversations. I mean, look, you will never have a parent more engaged or ready to participate than the first day of school when they drop their kindergartner off. We have the luxury of, engaging with those parents at that moment. I mean, in some ways when they're at their most vulnerable in their child's educational career. For anybody in here who's ever dropped their kindergartner off, that's the moment. And you start there, and you maintain that relationship for 6 years, and parents understand the value in high expectations and no excuses, and ensuring that college is not an option; it's a non-negotiable. So we have opportunities and we have options. It's possible.
So Rick, do you say amen and have anything to add to that?
Well, execute's kind of like a scary word for me. But to implement our model, I think I would say amen to that, obviously, from my background particularly. But also, we need teachers who love kids, genuinely love kids. We need them that are teachable, ready to learn a new way to approach kids and education. We need teachers who are immersed in their content. They don't just know, 2 + 2 = 4, but the whys and the hows, and can really make connections and relevance and everything like that. And we need a strong work ethic. To work in our model is not easy. It is rewarding. It is strategic, but it's no less work than it is in a traditional classroom. It's whether you want to work smarter or harder. And our teachers are working smarter using data.
All right, so with that, we need to be true to our word. It is 1 o'clock, and I know many of you need to leave. But if you would like to stay, we're going to continue the discussion. Those of you that are watching via ktvb.com or any way that you would like to stick with us, we're going to ask a few more questions and get a few more answers. But don't feel at all shy about getting up and leaving if you need to, because we understand it's a busy world out there. We've got a lot to do. If you guys need to take a drink or something, we'll just take about 30 seconds to let folks get up and get on their way. I do want to mention real quickly that and forgive me for not mentioning this before you're leaving. Next month, we're going to turn our attention to a topic around which legislators have drawn lines in the sand, and that is early education, early childhood education. And the topic, Digital Frontiers for Our Littlest Learners, and the speaker is Mindy Brooks from Sesame Street. So spread the word about that. If you're interested in early childhood education, have questions about that, then next month you want to be right here. But these are here that I have not asked. And so, yeah, let's see. Yeah, these I have not asked. So I can just leave those there. And I'm sorry,